He was my son's tutor, but then he asked me for help, and I said yes. I didn't think about the line I was crossing until it was too late. My name is Claire, I'm 47, and I live in a beige 2-story house at the edge of a neighborhood that's always felt a little too quiet. I've been married to Mark for 21 years. Long enough that the silence between us started to feel like furniture, comfortable, permanent, and completely invisible. I was the one who made the lunches, scheduled the dentist appointments, bought the birthday gifts. I ran the house like a well-oiled machine, because if I didn't, everything fell apart. Mark was reliable, the way a roof is reliable. You're grateful when it storms, but you don't think about it when the sun's out. We weren't unhappy. We just weren't. Anything. Our son, Ethan, just turned 17. Bright kid, good heart, terrible at calculus. And that's how Jamie came into our lives. Jamie was 28, clean-cut, but scruffy in that effortless way some men pull off. He wore flannel shirts, always rolled up to the elbows, and he smiled like he knew something the rest of the room didn't. He came highly recommended from a neighbor whose daughter had a crush on him. I should have known then. The first time he came over, I remember opening the door with flour on my hands. I was baking something for a fundraiser. He smiled and said, "I'll try not to distract you," like he already knew he would. He always greeted me, not just with a polite nod, but with real eye contact. Like he actually saw me. That was new. He smelled like cedar and something faintly sweet, maybe cologne, maybe just youth. He sat at the kitchen table with Ethan for an hour twice a week. I pretended to stay busy, dishes, mail, laundry, but my ears stayed tuned to his voice. And then he started staying a little longer. Just a few minutes after the session, still sitting at the table, asking me casual questions. "How's your week going?" Or, "That looks good. What are you cooking?" He wasn't flirting. Not exactly. But something shifted. And I felt it before I could name it. One Thursday, I brought over a plate of cookies I'd just pulled out of the oven. He took one, bit into it, and groaned, a sound that made my skin flush before I could stop it. I laughed it off, but my hands trembled a little when I picked up the tray. He noticed. A week later, I caught him looking at me, not accidentally, not quickly. He held the glance just a second too long, and I felt it like a spark behind my ribs. I remember thinking, this is harmless. I'm old enough to know where the line is. He started opening up about his life. How his dad left when he was a kid. How he'd put himself through school. How he tutored not just for the money, but because he believed in giving kids the kind of support he never had. I found myself looking forward to our conversations more than I should have. I started dressing a little differently on tutoring days. Soft sweaters. A hint of mascara. Just enough to feel visible. One night, Mark was working late again. Ethan had gone to a friend's. Jamie stayed behind to ask me something. He looked nervous. "I don't usually do this," he said, running a hand through his hair. "But would you mind if I asked you for some help with something?" I hesitated. "Depends on what it is." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I've been working on a scholarship essay. Personal stuff. Anne, I don't really have anyone to look it over. You're smart. And honest. I trust you." It was the first time I'd heard those words in a long time. I told him yes. We sat at the table after dinner. Just the two of us. The house was too quiet. I read his essay. It was raw, deeply personal and honest. I felt my throat tighten halfway through. When I looked up at him, he was already watching me. "You're the first person I've let read that," he said. I swallowed hard. "It's beautiful." He smiled, but there was something different behind it. Something unsure. Vulnerable. "I don't know why I feel like I can talk to you," he said, voice barely above a whisper. I looked down at the page in front of me, my heart thudding. "Maybe because you can." We sat there in silence, the kind that pulses with everything unsaid. I felt his hand inch closer to mine on the table, not touching, but near enough that I could feel the warmth. I didn't move mine away. That was the moment. The line didn't blur. It vanished. The morning after felt like standing at the edge of a cliff I hadn't realized I was climbing. I moved through the house like a ghost, making coffee I didn't drink, folding laundry I couldn't remember washing. The dishwasher hummed quietly in the background, but my ears were ringing with his voice. The soft way he said my name. The way he looked at me like I was a question he'd finally figured out how to answer. I kept telling myself nothing had happened. Not really. No one touched anyone. No promises. No secrets spoken out loud. But something had shifted, and I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. Like gravity itself had tilted just slightly. Jamie had left quietly the night before, but not before giving me a look that still lived behind my eyes. A look that said he wanted to stay. That he hoped I'd ask him to. Mark didn't seem to notice. He was up early, already dressed for work, phone in hand, mumbling something about meetings. I watched him from across the room, wondering how I could feel so far from someone who had seen me give birth, who knew my favorite coffee mug and the way I liked my eggs. But he hadn't seen me in years. That afternoon, I found Jamie's essay on the counter where I'd left it. I picked it up like it might burn me and reread the last paragraph. It was about trust, about how hard it was to give, how rare it was to find. I stared at the words until they blurred. I didn't know if I was angry at him or myself. Or both. The next time he came over, I told myself I'd stay away. Let him tutor Ethan, keep things normal, stay upstairs. But at 6:15, I was in the kitchen again, stirring a pot of sauce that didn't need stirring, counting down the minutes like I was waiting for something to break. He walked in, and my breath caught. He looked tired. Softer, somehow. Like the weight of whatever we hadn't done was pressing on him, too. He smiled gently. Hey. I nodded. Hey. Ethan's upstairs, said you could go up. He hesitated. Do you have a minute? I froze. I could have said no, but I didn't. We sat at the kitchen table again, like we had so many times before. Only this time, there was no homework, no essay between us. Just space. And tension. And memory. He leaned forward. I've been thinking about that night. So have I. Silence stretched between us, taut and heavy. I looked at his hands, strong, steady, resting on the table. They twitched slightly. He was nervous. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, he said. You didn't, I replied, too quickly. I could feel it then, the pull. That dangerous, quiet hum just beneath the surface. It wasn't just attraction. It was something deeper. He saw me in a way no one had in a very long time. Why do you look at me like that? I whispered. He blinked. Because you look like someone who forgot how to be wanted. That broke something in me. I closed my eyes. Exhaled. Felt my whole body tense with the ache of what I was about to do. I reached across the table. Just fingertips. Just enough to answer the question neither of us had asked aloud. He didn't move. We sat like that, hands not quite touching, hearts beating too loud, for what felt like a lifetime. And then, he pulled his hand back. I can't be the reason you lose something important, he said. I wanted to tell him that I'd already lost it. That I'd been losing it for years. One indifferent glance, one distracted dinner, one quiet dismissal at a time. But I didn't say any of that. He stood. I stood too. He stepped closer. And then. But we stood close enough that I could feel the heat off his skin. Close enough to feel the air catch between us. I'm sorry, he whispered. And then he was gone. But the line had already been crossed. Not with bodies, but with truths. 2 days later, I came home to find Mark in the garage. Alone. Silent. I hadn't seen him home that early in months. He didn't look at me when I said his name. Just stood there, facing the workbench. How long? He asked, voice steady. Too steady. I froze. How long what? He turned slowly. Held up his phone. Video. My heart stopped. I recognized the angle instantly. The living room camera we'd installed after the break-in 3 years ago. The one I had completely forgotten still recorded when motion was detected. There we were. Me and Jamie. That late night. The hand. The silence. The way I didn't move away. Mark didn't yell. Didn't curse. Didn't accuse. He just said, I watched this 3 times. Trying to figure out when I lost you. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. Was it him? No, I whispered. Not really. He nodded. Like that made sense. Like that somehow hurt worse. I'm staying at David's for a while, he said, picking up a duffel bag I hadn't noticed. You're leaving. I already did. A long time ago. I think you just noticed now. He walked out without another word. No fight. No closure. Just the sound of his car backing out, and a quiet that felt heavier than any silence I'd ever known. Ethan asked where his dad went. I told him he needed space. He asked if it was because of Jamie. I didn't answer. Jamie hasn't come back. He stopped tutoring the following week. No explanation. Just a polite email about scheduling conflicts. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe he knew the truth better than I did. Some people don't come into your life to stay. They come to show you what's missing. Mark left his wedding ring on the nightstand. I haven't touched it, because no matter what else I've lost, I can't pretend to still wear something that doesn't fit anymore.